You know that moment when you realize you've made a catastrophic mistake? Not the, oops, I forgot to file paperwork kind. The kind where you're standing in front of a diplomatic tribunal, your career is ash, and the human you helped is being called a war criminal by 6 different species, including your own. Yeah, that kind. My name is Specialist Kyle Varen, 3rd-tier enforcement officer, mid-range bureaucrat. The kind of person who was supposed to retire quietly, with a modest pension, and maybe a citation for adequate service. Instead, I helped a human mother stage a prison break across 4 star systems, violated 17 interstellar treaties, and accidentally started what the newscasters are calling the most significant shift in coalition power dynamics in 3 centuries. And the really messed up part? I'd do it again. This is the story of how one human, exhausted, furious, and completely out of her depth, burned through every rule we thought was sacred. How she made me question everything I'd been taught about strength, about justice, about what it means to protect someone. And how, in the end, she didn't save just her son. She saved me too. I need to state this for the record. I did not want this assignment. When Commander Thex handed me the datapad with her case file, I remember thinking the whole thing was bureaucratic punishment. 6 months of my life dedicated to monitoring a human prisoner, one human, in a facility designed for 1,200, felt like being sent to count grains of sand on a dead moon. Pointless. Degrading. I should have recognized the warning signs when Thex wouldn't make eye contact. The prisoner's name was Captain Elena Vasquez. My human, female. 43 solar standard years. Military record, 17 years in something called the Terran Deep Space Marines. Arrested during the Kestrin border conflict for, and I'm reading directly from the file here, unauthorized breach of sovereign territory, destruction of property valued at 4.7 million credits, assault on coalition peacekeepers, and theft of classified materials. Standard raider profile. We get 3 or 4 a year. What made her different was the note at the bottom of her file, handwritten by someone in intelligence. Do not allow contact with other inmates. Do not discuss her case. Report all behavioral anomalies directly to Section 7. Section 7 doesn't exist, officially. I clicked my mandibles twice, a habit I picked up during my academy years when I'm nervous, and accepted the assignment. The detention facility on Station Keras 9 squats in the shadow of a dying star. Everything here is the color of old blood. The walls, the floors, even the light filtering through the observation ports. It's a place designed to be forgotten, and everyone in it knows it. Prisoner 6847-V, Vasquez, was housed in Isolation Wing Delta. Alone. The first time I saw her, she was doing push-ups. Not the kind you do to pass time. The kind you do because stopping would mean thinking. Her jumpsuit, standard-issue grey polymer, was soaked through with sweat. Her hair, dark and shoulder-length, hung in damp clumps. The muscles in her shoulders bunched and released with mechanical precision. 73, 74, 75. She didn't acknowledge the cameras. Didn't acknowledge me watching through the monitor array in the observation booth. Just kept moving, her breath coming in short, controlled bursts that fogged the cold, recycled air. I checked the file again. She'd been here 41 days. No visitors, no communication privileges, no recreation time outside her cell. 41 days of nothing. And she was doing push-ups like she was training for something. I clicked my mandibles 3 times. Opened a voice channel. Prisoner 6847-V. Your morning nutrient ration is ready. She didn't stop. 89, 90, 91. Acknowledge verbal instruction, prisoner. 100. She dropped flat, chest heaving, and rolled onto her back. For a long moment she stared at the ceiling, arms spread like she was making snow angels on the concrete. Then she sat up, wiped her face with her sleeve, and looked directly at the camera. Her eyes were brown, ordinary, human. But there was something in them that made my dorsal spines twitch. "I'm not hungry," she said. Her voice was hoarse, quiet. "Give it to someone who needs it." All prisoners must... I know the rules, Specialist Viren. I froze. She knew my name, my rank. The file said she'd had zero contact with station personnel beyond automated delivery systems. No interrogations, no medical checks, nothing. How? Your badge. She pointed at the camera, at the reflection she couldn't possibly see clearly from that angle. You wear it on your left thorax plate. I can read backward script. It's a useful skill when you spend a lot of time staring at mirrors. I looked down. My identification badge was indeed visible in the monitor's reflection. She'd been watching me. For how long? I clicked my mandibles, searching for protocol. That's a violation of... Of what? She stood, stretching her shoulders with an audible crack. I'm in a cell 23 hours a day. You're the only person I see. What am I supposed to look at? The walls? You should be focused on rehabilitation. Rehabilitation, she laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. That's a nice word for breaking someone. You were convicted of... I know what I was convicted of. She walked to the nutrient port, a small slot in the wall, and collected the grey paste that passed for food here. I was there. She ate standing up. 3 bites. Put the container back in the recycling chute. I watched her in silence, trying to catalogue what felt wrong about this interaction. Most prisoners, especially humans, reacted to isolation in predictable ways. Aggression, pleading, despair. The psychological literature was clear. Sensory deprivation and social isolation broke cognitive resilience within 14 to 30 days. Vasquez had been here 41, and she'd spent the last hour doing push-ups and reading my name badge from across a room through a camera reflection. Why are you here? I asked. Stupid question. I knew why she was here. It was in the file, but something about her stillness made me want to hear her say it. She turned back to the camera. For a moment, I thought she'd refuse to answer. Then she smiled, a thin, bitter expression that didn't reach her eyes. I'm here because I went looking for my son, she said, and your government didn't like where I found him. The official record of Captain Elena Vasquez's arrest was 7 pages long. I read it 16 times in the first week. Here's the short version. 7 months ago, Vasquez's son, Corporal Marcus Vasquez, aged 22, went missing during a supply run near the Kestrin exclusion zone. His ship was found derelict, stripped for parts, crew manifest erased. The Terran Colonial Authority declared him KIA, killed in action, after a 6-week search turned up nothing. Standard pirate raid, standard body count. Vasquez didn't accept the ruling. She burned through her entire military pension hiring private investigators. Followed rumors through grey markets and smuggler dens. Tracked a lead to a black site labour camp on the moon, Kestrin 4, a facility operated by what the file euphemistically called non-state actors, but which everyone knew meant slavers under coalition protection. She went in alone, killed 11 guards, freed 47 prisoners. Her son wasn't among them. But she'd destroyed enough facility records and supply chains that the operation collapsed within a month. Cost someone very powerful a lot of money. So they made an example of her. The trial lasted 3 days. No defense attorney, no witnesses. Just a military tribunal, a guilty verdict, and a sentence. Life imprisonment, no parole, no appeal. And here's the part that kept me awake at night. Clicking my mandibles in the dark. The facility she'd raided was never mentioned in official records. As far as the coalition was concerned, it didn't exist. Which meant Vasquez had been convicted of attacking a place that wasn't there, to free people who were never missing, in search of a son who'd been declared dead 7 months ago. I started bringing her things. Stupid things. A book on station maintenance procedures. A spare data stylus. A fibre cloth that was slightly less scratchy than the standard issue ones. I told myself it was because she was cooperative, because monitoring a prisoner who didn't cause problems made my job easier. But the truth I didn't want to examine, was that I couldn't stop thinking about her son, about the kind of person who would burn their entire life down for the chance, however small, that someone they loved might still be alive. On day 53, I brought her a tactical puzzle cube, one of those stupid officer training tools we used at the academy. She solved it in 4 minutes. "You're good at that," I said through the comm. "I taught my son how to solve these when he was 8. She reset the cube, her fingers moving with practiced ease. And he got faster than me by the time he was 12. Must have been a smart kid. He is. Present tense, deliberate. He wanted to be an engineer, build things instead of breaking them. She paused, staring at the cube. I told him the military would pay for his education, that he'd get to see the galaxy, that it was safe. Her jaw tightened. I lied. I didn't know what to say to that. She set the cube down carefully, like it might shatter. "He sent me a message 2 days before he disappeared," she said quietly. 3 words. "Something's wrong, Mum." "Did you report it?" Of course I reported it. Filed it with his CO, with Fleet Intelligence, with the goddamn chaplain. She looked up at the camera. "You know what they told me? That he was probably just homesick. That young soldiers get anxious. That I should stop worrying. And then his ship disappeared, and they stopped answering my calls." She picked up the cube again, turning it over in her hands. "I'm not crazy, Specialist Varen. I know how this looks. Grieving mother can't let go. I've read the psychological profiles. But Marcus wasn't homesick. He was scared." "Of what?" She didn't answer. Just kept turning the cube, over and over, like she was solving a puzzle only she could see. On day 61, alarms started screaming through the station. I was 3 sectors away when it happened. Mid-shift, running diagnostics on environmental systems because our atmospheric scrubbers had been acting up again. The alert came through my neural implant like a spike of ice behind my eyes. Security breach, isolation wing delta, multiple hostiles. I ran, stupid, reckless, and protocol said to wait for armed response teams. But isolation wing delta only had 1 prisoner. The corridors were chaos. Personnel scrambling for lockdown positions, blast doors grinding shut. Emergency lighting strobing red-white until my compound eyes ached. I reached Delta Wing to find the security gate torn open. Not unlocked, not hacked, torn. The reinforced durasteel was peeled back like foil, edges still glowing orange from whatever plasma cutter they'd used. 3 bodies in unmarked combat armor lay in the entrance corridor, their weapons missing. I clicked my mandibles 12 times. Rapid fire, panic clicking. Vasquez's cell door was open. I drew my sidearm, a light plasma pistol that suddenly felt like a toy, and approached slowly. The corridor smelled like burned metal and something organic I didn't want to identify. "Prisoner 6847-Phi, respond!" Nothing. I rounded the corner, weapon raised. The cell was empty. No, not empty. There was a body, armored, face down. 3 neat holes burned through the back of the helmet. And sitting against the far wall, blood streaming from a cut above her eye, was Vasquez. She'd zip-tied her own hands behind her back. I stared. "What?" "4 of them," she said, voice steady despite the blood. "They came for me. I didn't want to. You have to understand, I didn't want to." "Didn't want to what?" She looked up at me. Her eyes were red. Not from tears, from something else. They were wearing Kestrin insignia. Under the armor. I saw it when the first one's helmet cracked. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They knew where Marcus is." "What did you do?" I asked nicely. She swallowed hard. Then I asked less nicely. Then I stopped asking. I looked at the body, at the precision of those plasma burns, at the way her hands were shaking despite the zip ties. "Where are the other 3?" I asked. "Medical. Maybe, if they're lucky." She closed her eyes. "I need you to put this in the report, Specialist. I need it on record. They came here to kill me. They knew about the facility Marcus found. They knew I'd seen the prisoner manifests, and they were willing to risk a station breach to make sure I never talked." I couldn't finish the sentence. Because if she was right, It meant someone in the coalition had just ordered a hit inside a military detention facility. It meant her trial was a cover-up. It meant her son... "He's alive," she said, reading my face. "I don't know where, but he's alive." And they're terrified I'll find him. The station's emergency klaxons were still wailing. Response teams would arrive in minutes. This entire wing would be locked down, investigated, buried in paperwork, and classified reports that would vanish into Section 7's black archives. I looked at her. This human. This prisoner who'd been convicted of attacking a place that didn't exist. This mother who'd just survived an assassination attempt by people who officially weren't here. And I made a choice that would end my career. "Can you stand?" I asked. She blinked. "What?" "Can you stand, Captain Vasquez?" Understanding flickered across her face. Then fear. Don't do this. I'll be fine." I was lying. We both knew it. "Now get up. We have maybe 3 minutes before armed response arrives. And I really don't want to explain to them why I'm helping a prisoner escape." "Why?" I cut the zip ties with my ceremonial blade. Pulled her to her feet. "Because 61 days ago, you said you weren't hungry and gave your food to someone who needed it." I clicked my mandibles once, slowly. "Because you did push-ups for an hour while everyone else in this station gave up." I handed her the dead attacker's weapon. "And because your son sent you a message that said, 'Something's wrong, Mum.' And I think..." I paused. "I think someone needs to find out what he meant." She took the weapon, checked the charge, looked at me with those ordinary brown human eyes that suddenly didn't seem ordinary at all. "You understand what you're doing?" she asked. "They'll call this treason." "Probably. You'll lose everything." "I know. And we might not find him." I thought about my personnel file, my adequate service record, my quiet retirement that was supposed to be 6 months away. "Then at least we'll have tried," I said. For the first time since I'd met her, Elena Vasquez smiled. Really smiled. And for just a moment, I understood what it meant to be human. 3 weeks running. That's how long we lasted before Section 7 found us. Not caught. Found. There's a difference. We were holed up in a cargo hauler's quarters on the edge of the Velis chain, one of those asteroid mining outposts where asking questions gets you spaced faster than stealing someone's oxygen ration. Elena had traded the dead attacker's armor for passage and supplies. I'd used my last official access codes to pull shipping manifests and prisoner transfer records, looking for patterns, names, anything that might lead to her son. I remember the moment everything changed. Elena was asleep. Actually asleep, not the half-awake combat rest she usually did, curled on a bunk that was too small for her frame, one hand tucked under her cheek like a kid. She'd been running on stims and sheer spite for 72 hours straight. I was cycling through data files, clicking my mandibles in rhythm with the station's ventilation hum, when I found it. Transfer record 4477-JKL prisoner manifest. Kestrin 4 to undisclosed location. 48 names. 47 matched the people Elena had freed. 1 didn't. Corporal M. Vasquez, Terran Colonial Marines, age 22. Status, transferred, not dead. Transferred. My hands shook so hard I nearly dropped the datapad. "Elena!" My voice cracked. "Elena, wake up!" She was on her feet before her eyes opened, weapon drawn, scanning for threats. 7 years of military reflex. "What? What is it?" I held up the datapad. She read it once, twice. Then she sat down hard on the bunk, staring at the screen like it might dissolve if she looked away. "Transferred," she whispered. "Not killed? Transferred. 4 months ago." "Where?" That's when I had to tell her the part that made my dorsal spines ache. "The manifest doesn't say. It's redacted. Section 7 clearance only." I paused. "But there's a note at the bottom. A processing code." "What kind of code?" I showed her. "Experimental designation. Endurance trial. Batch 7. She went very still. "They're testing them," she said quietly. "That's what this is. When they're testing humans. We don't know that..." "Yes, we do." She looked up at me, and there was something in her eyes that made me want to back away. The facility I raided, it wasn't just slave labor. There were medical bays, equipment I didn't recognize, sterile rooms with restraint tables. Eleanor, they're trying to figure out what makes us different. Her voice was flat, cold. What makes us survive things other species can't? And they're using prisoners, people no one will look for, to do it. I thought about my academy training, about coalition ethics protocols, about the 17 treaties that explicitly forbade biological experimentation on sentient species. And then I thought about Section 7, about the facility that didn't exist, about the trial that had no witnesses. We need to find out who's running this, I said. Yeah, no. Elena stood, started packing our gear with quick, efficient movements. We need to find Marcus, now, before they... She stopped, swallowed hard. Before they finish whatever they're doing to him. Elena, if we move without a plan, then we move without a plan. She strapped a weapon to her thigh, another to her back. I've been patient, Carl. I've played by rules. I filed reports. I trusted the system. I did everything right. And the system declared my son dead while shipping him off to be someone's lab experiment. She grabbed my shoulders. Her hands were warm. Humans ran hot. I'd learned that over the past 3 weeks. I'm done being patient, she said. Are you with me? I should have said no. I should have reminded her that I was a mid-level bureaucrat with basic weapons training and a pension I'd probably never collect. That she was asking me to commit actual treason against the most powerful intelligence apparatus in the coalition. Instead, I clicked my mandibles twice. Where do we start? The processing code led us to a supply contractor. The contractor led us to a shell corporation. The shell corporation led us to a shipping route that terminated at a research station in the Hadros sector. And the research station, according to records I pulled using credentials I absolutely did not have clearance for, was owned by a man named Director Ven Karos. Elena went pale when I told her the name. You know him? I asked. I know of him. She pulled up a holo image. He testified at my trial, said I'd damaged critical infrastructure, destroyed years of research. He was very convincing. The hologram showed a Zenthari male, tall, grey-skinned, with the kind of face that looked trustworthy right up until you realized his eyes never moved when he smiled. He's Coalition Intelligence, Elena said. Deputy Director of Xenobiological Integration, which is a nice way of saying he studies how to weaponize other species' biology. Weaponize? Turn it into something useful, a drug, a combat enhancement, a way to make soldiers stronger, faster, harder to kill. She zoomed in on his credentials. He's been doing this for 20 years, and he's very, very good at making ethical concerns disappear. I stared at the image, at this person who'd stood in front of a tribunal and lied, who'd helped bury Elena to protect his research, who was currently doing God knows what to her son. How do we get to him? I asked. Elena smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. We make him come to us. The plan was stupid. No, the plan was insane. But it was also the kind of insane that only worked because nobody in their right mind would try it. We leaked information, not to journalists or activists or anyone who might actually do something useful with it. We leaked it to the Kestrin Syndicate, the criminal organization that had tried to kill Elena in the first place. We sent them everything: prisoner manifests, transfer records, financial trails linking Karos to the black site facilities. And then we added one more piece of data: the location of a classified weapons depot that happened to be on the same station as Karos's research lab. Elena explained it while we prepped our gear. The syndicate doesn't care about the research. They care about money. And that depot is worth, she checked the manifest, were approximately 40 million credits in untraceable military hardware. So they'll raid the station. They'll raid the station. Karos will panic, and when he panics, he'll move his high-value assets. I clicked my mandibles, including the prisoners, including Marcus, and we'll be waiting. She checked the charge on her rifle. We'll be waiting. I looked at the weapons we'd acquired over the past 3 weeks. A mix of stolen military gear, black market specials, and one absolutely illegal plasma lance that Elena had assembled from parts she'd borrowed from various sources. "This is going to get us killed," I said. "Probably. And even if it works, we'll have every agency in the coalition hunting us." "Definitely. And the syndicate will want revenge for being used." "Almost certainly." I picked up my rifle. I'm a proper one this time. Not the ceremonial sidearm I'd carried at the detention facility. Elena had taught me how to use it, how to breathe through the recoil, how to aim for center mass and not think about what I was aiming at. "I really hate this plan," I said. "Me too." She handed me a combat vest. "But it's the only one we've got." The raid happened 6 days later. We watched from a stolen transport ship, floating dark in the debris field 3,000 kilometers from Karos's station. Elena had jury-rigged our sensors to tap into station security feeds. Highly illegal, would have gotten me court-martialed a month ago. Didn't even make my top 10 list of crimes anymore. The syndicate hit fast. 8 ships, military-grade holes with civilian transponders. They breached the station's outer ring in 4 places simultaneously. And within minutes, the security feeds showed firefights in every major corridor. "They're not subtle," I muttered. "Why be subtle when you have that much firepower?" Elena was tracking troop movements on 3 screens at once, her hands moving with practiced ease. "There, Delta Section, Medical Wing. That's where they'll keep high-value prisoners." "How do you know?" "Because that's where I'd keep them. Close to the research labs, easy to monitor, hard to access without clearance." She pulled up a schematic. 2 entry points, both will be locked down during the raid. "So how do we get in?" She grinned. "We make our own door." Plasma lances are illegal in 17 systems for good reason. They cut through reinforced hull plating like it's paper. They superheat the air around the beam, whilst creating a shockwave that can rupture organs from 3 meters away. And if you don't know what you're doing, they explode. Elena knew what she was doing. We docked at an emergency airlock, one of the small maintenance hatches used by repair crews, while the syndicate kept station security busy on the other side of the facility. Elena positioned the lance, adjusted the beam width, and cut a perfect circle through the hull. The section fell inward with a hollow clang. Alarms shrieked. Emergency bulkheads started to close. We ran. The corridors were chaos, smoke from firefights, flashing emergency lights, the smell of burned electronics, and something organic I tried not to identify. Elena moved like she'd done this 1,000 times. Weapon up, checking corners, hand signals I'd learned to interpret. Stop, move, danger, clear. We reached Medical Wing Delta just as the bulkheads finished sealing. Too late. Elena didn't hesitate. She planted a breaching charge, military grade, another item I was trying not to think about where she'd obtained it, and we took cover. The explosion was more concussive than I expected. My ears rang. My vision blurred. Then Elena was pulling me through the smoke. The medical wing was pristine. White walls, clean floors. The kind of sterile environment that made my skin crawl because it looked too normal for what I knew happened here. There were 12 rooms. 11 were empty. The 12th, I stopped. Elena pushed past me. There was a human male on a restraint table. Early 20s. Dark hair. Elena's eyes. He was unconscious. Tubes running into his arms. Monitors tracking vitals I didn't understand. But he was breathing. Marcus. Elena's voice cracked. She was at his side in 3 steps, hands shaking as she checked the restraints. "Marcus, baby, wake up. It's Mom. It's me." He didn't respond. I checked the monitors. He's sedated, heavy dosage. It'll take hours for him to metabolize it naturally. We don't have hours. I know. I started searching the room. Found a medical kit. There's a stimulant protocol used for emergency revivals. It's not gentle, but do it. I prepared the injection. My hands were steadier than I expected. "This is going to hurt him," I warned. "He's survived worse." But her voice was hollow. I administered the stimulant. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Marcus's eyes snapped open. He tried to sit up. The restraints caught. Panic flooded his face. Easy! Elena grabbed his shoulders. Easy, Marcus. It's me. It's Mom. He stared at her. Through her. Like he was seeing something that wasn't there. They're in the walls, he whispered. His voice was hoarse, raw. They're in the walls and they're counting, always counting. Why are they counting? Elena's face went white. He's hallucinating, I said. Side effect of whatever they... No. She cupped his face. No, baby, you're safe. Look at me. You're safe. Mom? His eyes focused. Really focused. Mom, what? How are you? Later. Right now we need to move. I released his restraints. He tried to stand and collapsed. I caught him, barely. Humans were heavier than they looked. Can you walk? Elena asked. I can... He swallowed hard. I can try. We got him upright, one arm over Elena's shoulders, one over mine. The corridor outside was filling with smoke. The station's emergency systems were failing. We had maybe 10 minutes before life support collapsed in this section. Which way? I asked. Elena checked her tactical display. Service tunnel, 300 meters. There's an emergency escape pod. Gunfire erupted behind us. I turned. 3 figures in coalition military armor. Not syndicate, official forces, and leading them, Director Ven Karos. He looked exactly like his hologram. Tall, grey-skinned, those empty eyes that didn't move when he smiled. And he was smiling now. Captain Vasquez, he said pleasantly, how resourceful of you. Elena shifted Marcus behind her, raised her weapon. Don't move. Or what? You'll shoot me? Karos spread his hands. In front of your son? With my security team right here? We both know how this ends. You don't know anything about me. Oh, but I do. He took a step closer. I know you've spent 7 months chasing ghosts. I know you destroyed years of research looking for a son who, let's be honest, isn't quite the person you remember anymore. Shut up. We've learned so much from him, Elena. About human endurance. About the threshold between consciousness and collapse. About how far we can push before the mind rewrites itself to cope. His smile widened. He's been very useful. Marcus made a sound. A small, broken whimper. Elena's finger tightened on the trigger. I could kill you right now, she said quietly. You could try. Karos gestured to his guards, but you'd never make it out. And then Marcus would go back to the lab. And this time, he looked at me, we'd have your friend here as well, a Zenthari officer who committed treason for a human. Imagine what we could learn from that. I felt my dorsal spines lock rigid. Elena didn't move, didn't blink. You think you've won, she said. You think because you have guards and authority and the entire coalition behind you, that this is over. Isn't it? No. She lowered her weapon. Because I didn't come here to rescue my son. Karos frowned. Then why? I came here to make you a deal. I didn't understand. Not at first. Elena stepped forward, away from Marcus, away from me. You want to know about human endurance? She asked. About what makes us different? I'll tell you. Elena, I started. She cut me off with a look. It's not genetics, she said to Karos. It's not evolution or biology or any of the things you're measuring in your labs. It's choice. Choice? We choose to keep going, even when logic says stop. Is even when every survival instinct says give up. We choose... Her voice cracked. We choose not to leave our people behind. Karos studied her. You're offering yourself as a research subject. In exchange for Marcus and Kyle. Full pardons. Safe passage. You get me. She smiled bitterly. You get someone who's survived things that should have broken me a dozen times over. Someone who kept fighting when everyone said her son was dead. Someone who burned her entire life down for a chance. Elena, no. Someone, she continued, ignoring me, who's going to give you more useful data than any sedated prisoner ever could. Because I'm volunteering, and you can study that choice. That's what you really want, isn't it? To understand why we do stupid, impossible things? Karos was quiet for a long moment. Then he started laughing. "Oh, Captain, you magnificent, ridiculous creature." He wiped his eyes. "You really think I'd let you trade yourself? After all this effort tracking you down? Then what? I'm keeping all three of you." He gestured to his guards. The mother who wouldn't quit, the son who survived 6 months of testing, and the officer who betrayed his species for friendship. That's not one data point. That's an entire research paper. The guards raised their weapons. Elena looked at Marcus, at me, and I saw the exact moment she made her choice. She triggered the plasma lance, the one still attached to her belt, the one that had cut through the station hull, the one that, if overcharged and detonated in a confined space, would breach this entire section. "Run!" she screamed. Time fragmented. I grabbed Marcus, ran. Behind us, Elena fired, not at the guards, but at the medical bay's oxygen recyclers. The explosion wasn't immediate. It built. A high-pitched whine that made my teeth ache. Karos's smile vanished. "Stop her!" Too late. The recyclers blew. The shockwave threw me into Marcus, both of us slamming into the corridor wall. Emergency bulkheads screamed shut. The corridor filled with smoke and chemical fire. I couldn't see, couldn't breathe. I felt Marcus's weight against me. Heard him gasping. We were alive. But Elena... A hand grabbed my shoulder, pulled me up. She was there, burned, bleeding, one arm hanging wrong, but alive. "Move!" she shouted over the alarms. "Now!" We ran. Behind us, I heard Karos screaming orders, heard weapons fire, heard the station's hull groaning as atmosphere vented into space. We reached the service tunnel, the escape pod. Marcus collapsed inside. I fell in after him. Elena stood at the hatch, weapon raised, covering our retreat. "Elena, get in!" I shouted. She fired 3 times, precise shots. Then she was inside, slamming the hatch. "Launch it!" I hit the emergency release. The pod screamed away from the station just as the medical wing's hull gave way entirely. Through the tiny viewport, I watched the section collapse, venting bodies and debris and secrets into the void. We floated in silence for a long moment. Then Marcus started laughing. It was a broken, half-hysterical sound that made Elena flinch. But he grabbed her hand and squeezed, and she squeezed back, and they sat there in the dim emergency lighting of an escape pod, holding on to each other like they might disappear. I checked our trajectory. We were adrift, no power for main engines. A life support for maybe 12 hours. But we were alive, and somewhere behind us, Director Karos was explaining to Section 7 how 3 fugitives had destroyed his research station, freed a high-value asset, and escaped. I clicked my mandibles once. Slowly. "What now?" Marcus asked. His voice was steadier, more present. Elena looked at me. "Now we disappear. Somewhere the Coalition won't look." "There's nowhere they won't look," I said. "There's one place." She pulled up a star chart on the pod's emergency nav system. Terran space. They can't touch us there, not without starting a war. "You want to run to Earth?" "I want to go home." She looked at her son. "We both do." Marcus nodded. Yeah, I want to go home." I thought about my career, my pension, my adequate service that was supposed to end in a quiet retirement. I thought about Section 7, about Karos, about the research that would continue even with this facility destroyed. And I thought about Elena doing push-ups in a cell, refusing to give up, choosing to keep fighting even when the entire galaxy said her son was dead. "Okay," I said, "Terran space. How do we get there with a dead engine and no fuel?" Elena grinned. "Same way we've done everything else, which is, we improvise." We spent 47 days running. 47 days hopping between smuggler stations and abandoned mining outposts, trading salvaged equipment for fuel, sleeping in shifts because none of us could quite believe we'd made it out. Marcus was getting better. Slowly. The hallucinations had mostly stopped. Turned out Karos's research had involved some kind of sensory manipulation drug that rewired neural pathways. Elena found a black market medic on Outpost Jericho 9 who'd seen it before, who gave Marcus a detox protocol and didn't ask questions. But the nightmares didn't stop. I'd wake in the middle of the sleep cycle to find him staring at the walls, counting under his breath. When Eleanor asked him what he was counting, he'd just shake his head and say, making sure they're still there. The walls. He was counting the walls, to make sure they were real. That's what 6 months in Karos's lab had done to him. We were 3 days from the Terran border when the message came through. I was on watch, my turn in the rotation, monitoring comms traffic for any sign of coalition pursuit. The ship we'd acquired was a gutted freight hauler called the Broken Promise. Appropriate name. It barely qualified as spaceworthy, but it was fast, and its reactor signature was generic enough to avoid most scans. The message wasn't addressed to us. It was a general broadcast. Coalition Emergency Network. Priority 1. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the header. Terrorist attack. Civilian station. Arclight 7. Casualties estimated 4,000 plus my dorsal spines locked. I opened the full report. The station had been bombed. Multiple plasma charges detonated in residential sectors. Life support catastrophically compromised. Survivors were being evacuated, but the death toll was climbing. And at the bottom of the report, in the section listing suspected perpetrators, Captain Elena Vasquez, Terran, Specialist Kale Viren, Zenthari, Corporal Marcus Vasquez, Terran, armed and extremely dangerous. Approach with lethal force authorized. I read it 3 times. I felt my secondary stomach clench. They'd bombed a civilian station and blamed us. I pulled up the timeline, cross-referenced our navigation logs. We'd been nowhere near Arclight 7. We'd been in the Helix Nebula salvaging parts 40,000 light-years away when the attack happened. It didn't matter. Section 7 had made us the story. Kyle? I turned. Eleanor was standing in the doorway, hair mussed from sleep. She saw my face. What happened? I showed her. She read in silence. Her expression didn't change, but I watched her hands tighten on the datapad until her knuckles went white. 4,000 people, she whispered. We weren't there. I know. She set the datapad down carefully. But it doesn't matter, does it? They're not trying to catch us. They're making us uncatchable. What? Think about it. Every station we dock at, every port that gives us fuel, they're now harboring terrorists. Anyone who helps us is complicit. She laughed bitterly. Karos is making sure we can't run, because if we can't run, we have to fight. And if we fight, we prove them right. We prove them right? Marcus appeared behind her. He looked more alert than he had in weeks. So what do? We keep going, Elena said. Terran space. Once we're across the border, they'll follow. I clicked my mandibles. The Coalition can't pursue into Terran space without escalating to a military incident. But Section 7? They don't care about borders. Then we deal with them when they come. Elena, what do you want me to say, Kyle? She turned on me. That we should turn ourselves in? Face a trial that we know is rigged? Let Karos put Marcus back in his lab and study him until he breaks. I want you to acknowledge that we're out of options. I'm out of options. I've been out of options since the day Marcus disappeared. But I'm still here. We're still here. She grabbed my shoulders, and we're going to keep being here until we're not. It wasn't logic. It wasn't strategy. It was pure human stubbornness. And somehow, impossibly, I found myself nodding. Okay, I said. Okay. What's the plan? She pulled up a star chart. We're 3 days from the border, but there's a checkpoint, Coalition Customs Station. They'll have our faces flagged. The moment we try to cross, they'll lock us down. So we go around. There is no around. The border's monitored for 2,000 light years in either direction. She zoomed in. Except here. She pointed to a section of space marked with hazard warnings. The drift, Marcus read. What is that? Uncharted territory, I said. Between Coalition and Terran space. No stations, no settlements, no mapped routes. Ships that go in don't usually come out. Why? Because it's unstable. Gravitational anomalies, rogue asteroids, dead ships from 3 different wars just floating in the debris field. I looked at Elena. You can't be serious. It's our only option. It's suicide. So is the checkpoint. She met my eyes. At least this way, we go down fighting. The drift looked like someone had shattered a solar system and left the pieces floating. Asteroids the size of cities tumbled through gravitational eddies. Derelict ships, Coalition, Terran, species I didn't recognize, hung in the void like metal corpses. And our sensors screamed warnings every 3 seconds. Marcus was piloting. Turned out, 6 months of hallucinations had sharpened his reflexes to something almost supernatural. He navigated through debris fields that should have been impossible, threading the broken promise through gaps I wouldn't have attempted in a shuttle. "How are you doing this?" I asked. I counted. He didn't look away from the viewport. In the lab, when they'd run the tests, I'd count. Patterns. Sequences. It was the only way to stay sane. Counting kept you sane. Counting kept me human. He pulled hard on the controls, avoiding a chunk of frozen hull. They wanted to see how far they could push before I broke. So I pushed back. Every time they ran a test, I'd find the pattern, solve it, beat it. Elena was gripping the co-pilot's chair. "Marcus, I'm okay, Mom." "I'm okay." He smiled. It was a fragile thing. "I just need you to trust me. Always." We flew in silence for an hour. Then the sensors started screaming for a different reason. "Contact," I called. 3 ships. Closing fast. Elena pulled up the tactical display. Coalition signatures, military-grade frigates. They followed us into the drift? Karos followed us into the drift. She pointed at the lead ship. That's his personal vessel. I recognized the configuration. Marcus's hands tightened on the controls. "What do we do?" "We run," Elena said. "Straight through. Don't stop. Don't engage. Just run. They're faster than us. Then fly better." It should have been impossible. The broken promise was a freight hauler held together with salvaged parts and desperate hope. The Coalition frigates were military warships with weapons systems that could vaporize us from 5,000 kilometers away. But Marcus flew like the ship was an extension of his body. He dove through asteroid fields, threaded between dead ships, used gravitational eddies to slingshot around debris at speeds that made our hull groan. Behind us, the frigates tried to follow. One clipped an asteroid. Explosive decompression. Gone. 2 remaining. "They're charging weapons," I reported. "Marcus, I see them." Plasma fire lit up the void. Marcus banked hard, using a derelict Terran destroyer as cover. The shots impacted the wreck, superheating metal that had been cold for decades. "How much farther?" Elena asked. I checked navigation. 16,000 kilometers to the border. But there's something... The sensors went haywire. Dead ahead. His space was wrong. Not broken. Wrong. It looked like reality had been folded in on itself, creating a knot of distorted light and impossible angles. "What the hell is that?" Marcus whispered. "Gravitational anomaly." My voice sounded distant. "Class 7, maybe 8. I've never seen readings this extreme. Can we go around?" "Not with them on our tail." Elena stared at the anomaly, at the pursuing frigates, at the impossible choice. Then she started laughing. "What's funny?" I demanded. "We're about to do something really, really stupid." She looked at Marcus. "How's your counting?" He understood immediately. "You want me to navigate through that? I want you to try." "Mom, the math doesn't even work on anomalies like that. The gravitational shear alone. We'll tear the frigates apart if they follow us." "It'll tear us apart too." "Maybe." She squeezed his shoulder. "But you've survived worse. And you're the best pilot I know." He looked at the anomaly. At her. At me. Then he grinned. a wild, reckless expression that was pure Elena. "Okay," he said. "Okay, but if we die, I'm haunting both of you." He aimed straight for the center of the impossible space. The universe folded. That's the only way I can describe it. We hit the edge of the anomaly, and physics stopped making sense. Up became sideways. Forward became inside out. The hull groaned. Warning klaxons screamed. I tasted colors I didn't have names for. Marcus flew by instinct and mathematics I couldn't follow, calling out numbers under his breath like they were prayers. 47, 91, no, 33. Adjust pitch 7 degrees. Roll -12. The ship responded to inputs that shouldn't have worked. Behind us, I glimpsed the frigates entering the anomaly. They weren't counting. They weren't Marcus. The first ship folded, not exploded. Folded. Like reality compressed it into a shape that couldn't exist, and then forgot it was ever there. The second ship tried to retreat. Too late. The anomaly caught it. Pulled it apart, atom by atom. I watched through sensors that barely functioned as the frigate unraveled into its component elements. "Almost through!" Marcus shouted. "Brace!" We hit the far side of the anomaly, like hitting a wall of water. The transition was violent. My vision grayed. My dorsal spines locked so hard I thought they'd snap. Then we were through. Space was normal again. Stars in predictable patterns. Physics that made sense. And dead ahead, the Terran border. Marcus pulled back on the throttle. The ship coasted. Alarms slowly quieted. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Elena leaned over and kissed the top of Marcus's head. "You did it." "We did it," he corrected. His hands were shaking. "Holy hell, we actually did it." I checked the sensors. No pursuit. The anomaly collapsed behind us. Even if more ships were following, they'd have to find another route. How long would that take? Days, maybe weeks. I allowed myself a small click of relief. We have time. Elena pulled up the comm system. Then let's use it. She opened a channel to Terran Border Control. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Colonial Marines, requesting emergency asylum. And I have 2 passengers and classified intelligence regarding Coalition Black Site operations. We are unarmed and requesting immediate assistance." Static. Then a voice. Human, male, professional. "Captain Vasquez, we have you on sensors. Stand by for escort and, A pause. Welcome home." Elena's eyes went bright. She didn't cry, but her voice cracked when she said, "Copy that. Standing by." The Terran patrol ship that met us was a destroyer called the Defiance. Appropriate. They took us aboard. Fed us real food, not nutrient paste. Actual cooked meals that Marcus ate like he'd forgotten what flavor was. Gave us medical attention. Put us in quarters that had doors that locked from the inside. I slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke, there was a message waiting. From Earth. From Terran intelligence. They wanted to debrief us. No, wanted everything we knew about Kairos, Section 7, the research facilities. Wanted coordinates, manifests, anything that could help them build a case. I found Elena on the observation deck, staring out at Earth. It hung there in the viewport, blue and green and impossibly alive. I'd seen it in hollows, of course. Every species had. The human homeworld. The death world that had spawned a species too stubborn to stay put. But seeing it like this, real, close enough to touch, it was different. "They want our testimony," I said. "I know." She didn't look away from the planet. Marcus already agreed. He wants to make sure this never happens to anyone else. "And you?" "I want..." She paused. "I want to take my son home. Let him sleep in a bed that's safe. Let him see a sunrise that isn't filtered through a ship's viewport. Let him be a person instead of a project." "You've earned that." "Have I?" She finally looked at me. 4,000 people died on Arclight 7, Kyle. They died because Kairos needed a story. Because I wouldn't quit. That's not your fault, isn't it? If I'd just accepted that Marcus was dead, then he'd still be in that lab, still being experimented on, still counting walls to stay sane. I moved closer. You saved him. That matters. Does it? To the families of those 4,000 people? I didn't have an answer to that. We stood in silence, watching Earth turn. What will you do? She asked, finally. You can't go back to the Coalition. They'll execute you. I know. You could stay here. Earth grants asylum to... I'm not Terran. No, but you're not quite Zenthari anymore either. She smiled sadly. You're something in between. Like me. Like Marcus. People who don't fit the boxes their governments made for them. I thought about my career, my pension, the life I was supposed to have. And I thought about Elena doing push-ups in a cell. About Marcus solving patterns to stay human. About the choice to keep going when every logical voice said, stop. What if we didn't stop? I said. What? What if we didn't stop here? What if we kept going? Kyle, there are other facilities, other prisoners. You said it yourself. Karos wasn't the only one running these programs. Section 7 is bigger than one director. I clicked my mandibles rapidly. What if we made them all public? What if we didn't just save Marcus? What if we saved everyone? Elena stared at me. That's insane. Probably. We barely survived this. Or another mission would kill us. Maybe. The entire Coalition would hunt us. Terran intelligence couldn't protect us if we went back out there. Almost certainly. She looked at Earth, at her son's homeworld, at the peaceful life she'd earned. Then she looked at me. When do we leave? She asked. 3 months later, we were back in Coalition space, not as fugitives, as ghosts. We'd leaked everything, every file, every manifest, every classified document we'd stolen from Karos's facility. Sent it to journalists, activists, opposition politicians. Sent it to species whose members were being held in black sites. Sent it to military officers who didn't know what their governments were doing in their names. The Coalition tried to suppress it. Too late. The story was everywhere. Protests in 17 systems. Calls for investigations. 3 directors resigned. Section 7 went to ground. And Karos? Karos disappeared. But we knew he was still out there, still running facilities, still experimenting. So we kept hunting. We freed 83 prisoners in the first year, destroyed 4 facilities, built a network of former inmates, sympathetic officers, and criminals who owed us favors. Marcus flew. Elena fought. I planned. We became the thing the Coalition feared most. Proof that their system wasn't absolute. That people could fight back. That sometimes the stubborn ones won. I'm writing this from a station on the edge of Coalition space. We've just received word of another facility. Another set of prisoners who need freeing. Elena is checking her weapons. Marcus is running flight simulations. And I'm sitting here, clicking my mandibles in a rhythm that's become habit, thinking about how far I've come from that mid-level bureaucrat who just wanted a quiet retirement. I'll never get that retirement now. I'm a traitor to my species, a terrorist to my government, a ghost to everyone I used to know. And I've never been more certain that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Because Elena taught me something in that prison cell, all those months ago when I watched her do push-ups instead of giving up. Humans don't win because they're stronger. They don't win because they're smarter or faster or better armed. They win because they choose to keep going, even when it's stupid, even when it's impossible, even when every voice says, stop. They choose. And now, standing here with a human mother who burned the galaxy down to save her son, and a human son who counted walls to stay sane, and a future that's probably going to get me killed, I'm choosing too. I'm choosing to be human, not in biology, in spirit. And if that makes me a traitor, then I'll be the best damn traitor the Coalition has ever seen. Addendum. Recovered from Coalition Intelligence Archives. The following message was broadcast on 37 public channels simultaneously before being suppressed by Section 7. My name is Captain Elena Vasquez. This is Specialist Kyle Varan. And this is Corporal Marcus Vasquez. We are the people your governments call terrorists. We are the people who exposed the black sites, who freed the prisoners, who refused to be quiet when it was convenient. And we're not done. If you're being held against your will, we're coming for you. If you're being experimented on, we're coming for you. If you've been declared dead but you're still breathing, we're coming for you. Because we learned something the Coalition doesn't want you to know. You are not disposable. You are not experiments. You are not statistics. You are human, and humans don't leave their people behind. Not ever. Not even when it's impossible. Especially when it's impossible. See you soon.